The President of the European Council, Charles Michel, has spoken by telephone to President Putin. He's trying to persuade Russia to agree to a truce in eastern Ukraine to facilitate humanitarian corridors, but so far he's been unsuccessful. In the besieged city of Mariupol in the south, Russian troops are reported to be in control. The only resistance is coming from Ukrainian forces in a steel plant complex. Russia says it will let civilians leave if they surrender. On the diplomatic front, negotiations appear to have stalled. They've stalled now because another proposal that takes into account Ukraine's comments received earlier and that we handed over to Ukrainian negotiators 5 days ago remains unanswered. The Ukrainian president lamented Russia's refusal to a truce in the east for Orthodox Easter, and following comments by a Russian general, he repeated that Ukraine is only the beginning and that more states will be attacked by Moscow, referring, for example, to Moldova. New satellite images seem to confirm the discovery of a mass grave in Mariupol, and there are reports from the northern city of Kyiv that Russian shells continue to strike civilian structures, leaving dead and wounded victims and dozens of people homeless. However, Russia's main offensive is concentrated in the east, where Moscow's aim is to dominate and control the two regions of Donbass, where separatists have been fighting with Ukraine for 8 years. As Russian forces draw closer, residents are attempting to flee, with Red Cross workers helping to evacuate the most vulnerable. Despite the continuing Russian attacks on Ukrainian territory, life in the capital Kyiv has been returning to something like normal in recent weeks. Although the mayor's warning that the city is far from safe, more and more people are taking to the streets. Cafes, restaurants and other businesses are opening their doors to customers. Marina has just returned to Ukraine.
I think the Kyiv is coming back to life because the days when we came back, it was looking like more empty city, but now it's looking like more people are coming back. Of course, we have our luggages packed because we never know what will happen.
Marina's friend Anna has just started work again.
1 week ago, we opened our first business. It's bakery, so we saw that people are coming to the city and we have customers, we have guests, and we can work. We were delighted, really.
Most of the people returning are women and children, coming back not just to the place, but to the partners, husbands and grandparents that couldn't or wouldn't leave the country. So many people want to come back that the bus connection with the Polish capital, Warsaw, has been re-established. But you don't have to go too far from the city to find Ukrainian military teams defusing mines and other explosive devices left by Russian forces. It's a grim reminder that this war is far from over.
Fresh satellite pictures from Ukraine have revealed more rows of mass graves in Manhush, some 20 kilometres west of Mariupol. Officials say Russian soldiers have been transporting bodies for burial to the site, which contains 200 new graves. Meanwhile, Ukrainian police and forensic scientists are collecting evidence outside Kyiv after experts accused Putin's military of looting, intimidating, torturing and killing civilians in the village of Barvutsia.
Over these 8 weeks, international humanitarian law has not merely been ignored, but seemingly tossed aside. Russian armed forces have indiscriminately shelled and bombed populated areas, killing civilians and wrecking hospitals, schools and other civilian infrastructure. Actions that may amount to war crimes.
As investigations into potential war crimes continue, Euronews reporter Valerie Guria met with Ukraine's prosecutor general, who said the support of the courts is essential if Kyiv is to bring war criminals to trial.
We have 7,661 criminal cases only about war crimes, and more than 3,000 cases which are connected with war crimes. When we opened the mass graves with civilians, they were shot. Their arms were tied back their bodies. We have facts of sexual crimes against civilians, not only against women, and even against men, children and old women.
And in Borodyanka, north of the capital, the bodies of 9 civilians, including that of a 15-year-old girl, were found in a shallow grave behind a local hospital. The chief of police for Kyiv says some individuals showed signs of torture. Yulia arrived in Serbia from Bucha, Ukraine, with her daughter and grandson in mid-March. They miss their family and homeland every day, but she says it is even harder during the Easter period.
Everything is fine here, but I want to be at home with my family now for the holiday.
What members of your family were left behind?
My mother, father, and my son.
Home to 60 refugees from Ukraine, Yulia and her family are trying to get into the festive spirit at the Vranya Asylum Centre.
Today we painted and decorated these eggs. At home we do this on Good Friday.
We are far from home, but we like it here. The children are happy to have the same customs as here, the same tradition. Everything is the same. It's very nice.
Now we're not at home, and in this place we feeling happy because all our people this with us in this church. It's wonderful.
Our people also suffered and fled, so we know your torment and trouble. And that is why we want your stay here to be as pleasant as possible.
These refugee families will visit the museum and theatre in Vranya and the Pro-Hersinsky monastery over the holidays. And on Easter Sunday they will attend Mass, followed by a special lunch in the Church of the Holy Trinity.
Planting trees for peace. That was the aim of European parliamentarians in their visit to battle-scarred Bucha this Thursday. This Park for Peace has been built on the site of the Bucha massacre, in which at least 500 Ukrainian civilians were killed by Russian armed forces. But the mayor of the Ukrainian city urged Europe to do more now.
I understand that many rely on economic relations with Russia for the development of their countries. But in Europe, in Ukraine, people are dying. And all of Europe, countries of the European continent, must understand who they are dealing with. What Russia is doing is like Nazism. The only way to get peace is through our victory, and given the scale of destruction, it will be very difficult for us to rebuild on our own. The fact is, the Russian aggressor threw us back decades.
The presence of European parliamentarians in Bucha is welcome by the mayor of the city, but as he insisted, and as all Ukrainians I've met these days have been saying, signs of goodwill and declarations of intent are just not enough, they say, to save Ukraine and indeed the rest of Europe. Valerie Goria from Bucha for Euronews.
In Somalia, at least 8 people died and 13 were injured on Friday in a blast at a beachside restaurant in the capital Mogadishu. The country's police chief was in the restaurant at the time, along with a group of lawmakers, according to the ambulance service. The officials were unharmed. The explosion came days after a mortar attack targeted Somalia's parliament.
Portuguese prosecutors have identified a formal suspect in the disappearance of the British toddler Madeleine McCann. The announcement comes 15 years after she went missing from her family's apartment in Portugal. The long-lasting investigation spread across Europe, and it became world famous after her parents turned to the media for help to locate her. German authorities named Christian Buchner as a suspect in the case. He is currently imprisoned for raping a woman in the area where the toddler originally went missing. He is the first suspect to be named by authorities since 2007. The timing of this update falls just 1 month ahead of the 15-year anniversary of the disappearance, which is the statute of limitations for similar crimes in Portugal.